I'm making this video because you wouldn't believe the amount of absolute rubbish that's talked about battery powered cars, hybrid cars, plug-in hybrid cars, especially on social media. And to make matters even worse, often the dealers are no help either. Remember, they're paid on commission. They get more commission selling you a petrol engine vehicle. At the moment, this will change. I mean, it makes sense if you think about it. If everybody today wanted to buy a hybrid which contains a battery and a petrol engine, there probably won't be enough battery packs to go around. So the situation will change. But when I bought this car, which is a plug-in hybrid, I visited several dealers. Some were really helpful, others were terrible. A Toyota dealer told me I absolutely didn't want to buy one of those because when the battery's dead, you're carrying 250 kilos around of dead weight. No, actually, and in this video I'll go through in really basic terms how a hybrid works, how a plug-in hybrid works, why it's different. Just for completeness, I'll just briefly cover battery powered electric vehicles such as a Nissan Leaf or indeed a Tesla, and I explain all the differences between them in practical terms for real people. Now you might think, well, who am I to make this video? Am I an electronic engineer? Well, no, I'm not, but I've built a number of machines that use rechargeable batteries. This is a self-balancing electric unicycle with a 3000 watt rear hub from an electric motorbike. It's the only one in the world like that. This is just a fun thing. It's like a little scooter with a tank track. I'm now going to cover the absolute basics of electric motors. Don't worry, there's no volts, amps or watts, there's no maths. This takes just a few seconds. This is an electric motor. I have a cotton bud attached to the top of it with a piece of blue tack. This is a battery. Right, this is elementary school, right? What happens if you connect the wires to the battery, from the battery to the motor? Power flows from the battery to the motor, turning the wheels of our electric car. Right, now what happens if I connect a handle to this motor and I connect the two wires from the motor to a bulb? What would happen if I turn the handle? Right, you can see the motor is now acting as a generator. You may remember bicycles in the 70s had a little thing that rubbed against the wheel and it powered the little headlamp on the battery on the bicycle, called a dynamo. Well, that was the same idea. So if you spin a motor, it generates electricity, which you can see here. Now I could use that to recharge the battery. Suppose I'm going down a hill and the wheels are turning the motor. I can recover some of the energy and put it back into the battery. That's called regenerative braking. Okay, school lesson time. Don't worry, this is simple and it'll only take a moment. What's an electric car? An all-electric car. So here's the car, represented by my Lotus. That's the front, that's the back. Imagine this is, say, a Tesla. What have we got? We've got a humongously massive battery which is actually embedded in the floor of the car, weighs about 500 kilos, and that the power from that is controlled by a magic box of electronics, and the power is sent to a motor which drives the rear wheels. Some cars, some Teslas, have a motor at the front as well, driving the front wheels, but that's the general idea. So far that was pretty straightforward, wasn't it? Now this is where it gets a bit confusing for people. What's a normal hybrid car, known as an HEV? Confusingly, they can also be called self-charging hybrid by Toyota, which is designed to play on your fears that, oh my god, I might have to charge it up, I don't understand any of this, so you buy the Toyota. Self-charging hybrid is the same as a hybrid. It's a hybrid car. No difference. It doesn't have a charge port, that's the first thing. It just has a petrol cap. They're also called MHEVs, which is mild hybrid. I'll explain what they are in a minute. That's just a variation. So here's the front, here's the back. We have a small battery weighing about 50 kilos, 53 kilos in a Toyota Prius, one of the best known sort of original hybrids. In modern cars, usually the petrol engine drives the front wheels and everything's mounted widthways, and that's what you get in most kind of normal hybrids. So we have a petrol engine, we have a clutch. Now what's a clutch? Well, you might remember, hopefully, the clutch joins the engine to the gearbox, and it can be engaged. It's like two spinning plates that rub together. It can be engaged or disengaged where the engine is disconnected from the gearbox. So we have a clutch. Then between the engine and the clutch and the gearbox, there's an electric motor spinning that way. So, bearing in mind we've got a battery in the back, we can drive our front wheels using the electric motor with the clutch open and the petrol engine switched off. We can drive the car using the petrol engine with the clutch engaged, connecting to the gearbox, or we can have the petrol engine providing power and the electric motor providing power. Now the other cool thing is, if the petrol engine is spinning the gearbox and the electric motor acts as a dynamo or a generator, and that's generating power which goes back to charge the battery, hence the term which Toyota used, self-charging hybrid, but that also refers to all hybrids. That's how they work. So why is this more efficient? People say, well, you're adding all this complexity, why does it give you better fuel efficiency? The reason is, petrol engines are a bit rubbish at low speed, stop-start driving around town, that sort of thing. They're much more efficient just going along at a set speed without thrashing it on a motorway, for example. So in a normal hybrid car, between 0 and 20 miles an hour, you'll be running on the electric motor, drawing a bit of power from the battery. The motor's not powerful enough to drive you at motorway speeds, in which case you'd use a mixture of both. And if the battery's running low, in fact the petrol engine is using the motor as a dynamo, as a generator, to put power into the battery. It's all controlled by a computer which just picks the best combination to give you the best fuel economy, basically. This is where people get confused. What is a plug-in hybrid car then? It's kind of the same, it's not much difference. It's exactly the same layout as in the hybrid with two changes. Bigger electric motor, bigger battery, not as big as in a Tesla or something like that, about 80 to 100 kilos in weight, something like that. Right, so what's the advantage of that? It also has a charging port as well as a petrol cap. So the bigger battery with a bigger motor will let you go up to about, well in my car it'll go up to about 80 miles an hour on level ground on the motorway, running on the electric motor alone. Remember, the motor in the normal hybrid isn't powerful enough, the electric motor, to do more than sort of lowish speeds. So you can run it for about 20 to 30 miles, it varies between models. Do your homework. Some are extremely small in electric range, even though they may be pricey vehicles, especially if they're big and heavy and SUV shaped. My Hyundai Ioniq will do claimed 37 to 39 miles, it actually does about 32, but that's still on the higher end, especially for at the budget end of the market for the all-electric range. And again, when you're moving around town, it will run on the electric motor. If you switch it to electric mode on the motorway and you don't have a lead right foot and you don't drive like a boy racer, you just accelerate gently, then it's quite happy to run on the electric motor alone. Should you put your foot down to the floor on the accelerator, then it will use both. You'll hear the petrol engine kick in, clutch will engage, it'll use electricity and petrol to give you as much power as possible. The other big thing, which I'll show you in video, is when you move off at the lights, then it's not it's not a sports car, but the time it takes to get from 0 to say 10 miles an hour is really quick because there's no lag. The moment you touch the accelerator, the electric motor's on full power, because it will generate full power, albeit it's only about 60 something horsepower from the electric motor when it's on its own, but it's instant and it's the full horsepower immediately. So if you need to do a tricky lane change because you're at the lights and unfortunately you're in the wrong lane, you can get away quickly. Again, it's something you never see mentioned in videos on this kind of topic. Now, one thing you never hear anybody talk about in videos on hybrid cars, plug-in hybrids or electric cars is the fact that you can reverse up a hill extremely slowly if you want to. If you want to do that in a normal car, you're burning out the clutch. So I'm going to reverse this car up this hill here, steep bit just here, and then round this corner, and I'm going to do it nice and slowly so I don't hit anything. Okay, so here we go. So we turn on the engine, everything lights up, everything comes up on here, release the foot brake, I've got my foot on the normal brake, put it in reverse, there we go, rear view camera's on. You'll notice how it moves as I turn the wheel, so it shows you where you're going to end up. Okay, so I'm going to reverse up this drive, okay, like this, and I'm going to do it at 1 mile an hour. There we are. I'm looking in my rearview mirror there. There we are. There we go. And then I'll just turn the wheel a little bit. Now if I was doing this in my camper van, the clutch should be screaming by now. There's no way you could do it this slowly. You've just got to go for it and hope you aim it correctly. So that, there we go, that is one of the amazing features of this type of car which no one ever talks about. Now I live in Wales and it's not very flat. This is actually a very useful feature. One final thing, braking. You'll notice my car has disc brakes front and rear. And you may go, ah yes, but that's because it's really heavy. No, actually, we've already come to that. It's slightly heavier than a normal car by about 100 kilos, okay? But they save weight elsewhere and the car's highly aerodynamic. So, braking. What's regenerative braking? When you brake, we've already covered the fact that you can use an electric motor as a generator. If you spin the motor using some outside means, okay, I showed you a video of me turning the crank handle and the light bulb coming on, it will put power back into the battery. So obviously if you're designing an electric car, you want that. When you brake, what you actually want to do is use all that power that's been generated by these wheels turning and the car going forward to spin the motor, to convert that braking energy into useful electricity to charge the battery. Normal disc brakes actually just turn all the energy stored in the motion of the car moving forward, being forced to slow down, they turn that into heat. And on racing cars you'll see them actually glowing red as the heat's radiated away from the discs and conducted to the air. So that's wasted energy. You've put that energy into the car and you've now just expended it as heat into the environment. So wouldn't it be better to turn it into something useful like electricity for your battery, giving you a bit more range? So electric cars and hybrids and plug-in hybrids to varying extents use what's called regenerative braking, which means when you brake, the motor is doing the braking. The brake discs are hardly doing anything. There are stories of cars being driven gently where the brake discs have actually rusted a bit because they're not used. So if anything, your brake pads should actually last longer than in a normal car, not less time. It's one of these myths is that if you drive something like a Tesla, your brakes will wear out really fast and you'll put lots of rubber and brake pad material into the atmosphere. It's one of these scare stories because the car's quite heavy and it needs more braking force. No, it's used to regenerate electricity for the battery. The brakes are hardly used, the disc brakes. So you might say, well, why are they there on the car? They're there on the car because if you need to do an emergency stop or stop really fast, then yeah, sure, you need to stop really fast. So you need the disc brakes. Now you might say it's a slightly strange aerodynamic shape. And yes, it is. I quite like it. You'll notice it's just a tiny bit longer than you might expect. It's very smooth and you've got all the gaps are filled in with rubber and it comes off with this sort of spoiler here. If you want to look up what that is, just look up cam tail, K-A-M-M, and all will be explained. Basically it's simply aerodynamics. It's got a drag coefficient of 0.26, which is one of the lowest of any car in production, including way more expensive ones. Seats fold forward and you'll notice they go pretty much fully flat, which actually means, bearing in mind the length of it, you can actually get a lot more stuff inside than you might think. Although the battery's under the floor here, it doesn't project up, which it does on the plug-in Prius, for example. You've also got some extra space here. So under the bonnet, at first glance, it doesn't look too different to any other car. There's obviously an engine, coolant, washer fluid, brake fluid, not sure about that one, and a giant sort of electrical power controller and a fuse box. So this is managing the power to the electric motor, and you can see the massive thick orange wire there, and you see the electric motor is somewhere under there. Now, although the car has standard disc brakes at the front and the back, if you brake hard they'll be used. If you brake gently, you actually use the electric motor to brake, and it acts as a generator and it puts power back into the battery. So these stories you hear of brake pads wearing out quickly on electric cars because of the extra weight, they're actually not true. Looking down the side of the car, you'll see there's a filler here which I've just opened, and there's one at the front. So there you go, petrol, no big deal. This one is for your charger. I'll just quickly go through what these buttons do here. That releases your petrol flap. This releases the plug from the car, so it's not locked in place when it's finished charging. That's if you're in a public charger and somebody's desperately waiting for the charger. They could unplug yours, but only when it's finished charging does it release it and then plug theirs in. I mean, I charge at home all the time, so it's not really an issue. This one, if you want to charge straight away, but you've got the overnight timer set, you can override the overnight timer. So say it's the middle of the day and you want to charge it up for some reason, you just press that and it will just let you charge it straight away from the charger. This is to do, that turns off the stability control. This is to do with the automatic staying in lane function, run by the camera up here. And this is, if you turn that on, it's now become compulsory, but this is a 2019 model. It wasn't compulsory, so you have a switch for it. Turn this on and it emits a sound when you're going at less than 10 miles an hour that sounds like a spaceship, like a UFO in an old 50s sci-fi movie. That is supposed to alert pedestrians that you're coming. In fact, it's not that loud. So and you can turn it on or off if you want to creep up on people and startle them, if that's your thing. Okay, come out of the house in the morning, take that out, put it away, there we go, and shut the hatch. Let's give it a little push. Right, and we get in the car. Today we're going to go to a mini American car show, so we'll see what that turns out like. It's not raining, that's good. And you'll remember that we're driving a plug-in hybrid, and we know that, I know that, because it's got a charge port and it's got a petrol cap for an engine. If you try to drive away with the cable plugged in, the car won't let you do it, by the way, so that's good. I'm in this car. This car's a plug-in hybrid. I've just got in and I'll just try and explain what I'm doing. So I put my foot on the brake, I check I'm in park, and I turn on the engine. And what do we see? So it powers up. That's very nice. This is a fairly sort of modestly priced plug-in hybrid, and as a plug-in hybrid, you see it's showing me 37 miles of range, which is exactly the same as when it was new 2 years ago. And I've got a gasoline range of 364 miles. Now, unlike a regular hybrid, this is a plug-in hybrid, which means I can choose to drive fully electric if I want to, at least for the first 37 miles. So if I press this, I watch this display. Right, it says hybrid mode. If I press it again, hear the engine go off? We're now in electric mode. So we're in electric mode. First thing you notice is, apart from the sound of the ventilation fan, it's really quiet, isn't it? Yes, that's the first thing. The engine's not running. Now, I'm going to a mini old American car show because I like that kind of thing. So, you know, here we are, got my filing system, SA18 1PT, so we'll just shove that in the nav system. Pedals, we have a foot brake and we have an accelerator, so it's just like an automatic car. I can drive it manually, changing gear if I want with the flappy paddles, but I mean, I'll just leave it in auto mode, drive it like an automatic. This car has a twin clutch gearbox. All you need to know about that is it makes the gear changes almost imperceptible. You can hardly hear them change, you can hardly feel them change. We put it into drive, get still, total silence, and off we go. Now, I'm going to show you, just before I get going, this gauge here is important. Charge. When you brake, the dots start going down to the bottom. That means you're regeneratively braking. You are not using the brake discs to brake, so we should brake gently. You're actually using the engine, the braking force, spinning the electric motor, generating power, putting that power back into the battery, rather than just blasting it away as heat, which is what happens if you brake normally with a normal car. Now, when I press the accelerator, you'll see the bars go into the green up here, eco zone. Up to about half acceleration, pedal halfway down, you're running on electric. If you floor it, you'll push your, if you like, the power you're trying to demand up into the white zone here, power. You'll hear the engine come on. So people sometimes get confused. They go, well, hang on, this is a plug-in hybrid car, therefore I can drive around in electric mode, can't I? Yes, but the electric motor has a power of about 60 something horsepower equivalent, and then you've got a petrol engine that gives us a bit more, 1.6 litre petrol engine. So clearly if you floor it, it will turn the petrol engine on and you'll get power from both that and the electric motor to give you the full power available. If you drive around gently though, stay in the green, which is up to about half the pedal halfway down, the accelerator pedal, it'll stay in electric mode. And so you'll see this as I'm driving, hopefully. This is a thing you see in electric cars, which no one ever talks about. When you move off at the lights, the power from the electric motor, it's not a sports car, it's not a Tesla, it won't blast off from the lights, but what it will do is it'll give you the full torque, that's the turning force of the electric motor. It'll give you the full available turning force immediately you press the pedal down. So what that means is it's like having really fast reaction times. As soon as the light goes green, bang, you're moving. There's not that half second to 1 second delay where the engine spools up or the turbos kick in. None of that. Full power straight away. So the 0 to 10 or the 0 to 20 time is something nobody ever talks about, but actually it's really, really helpful when you're driving around town. Right, more power. Right, that's half throttle. Okay, and we're up to, well, we're going quite fast already. This is residential area. Now you see, so car's just pulled out in front of me. So you see, put my foot down, get power, an electric motor, lift my foot off, dab the brake, see how I'm now turning that power back into electricity, which is going back into the motor. Gently. Now I'm braking hard here, so now the disc brakes would be working as well. Okay, so I've got my foot just halfway down. I've got the maximum electric power. If I put my foot down any harder, the motor will cut in. There we go. 60 miles an hour. Well, I've got my foot halfway down. The gearbox is probably in first or second gear. Friends, is a really steep hill. I mean, it continues for about half a mile. Right, you can see this is pretty steep. no problem at all. Here's one for the American viewers. We're in the middle of nowhere. It's quite rural Wales now. We've got a slightly battered American flag and a Corvette. So you can see here my electric range, I'm now parked, is 1 mile. I've got 2/3 of a tank of petrol. My gasoline range is 362 miles. So if I was to just keep driving electric mode, when it gets to 0 miles, the petrol engine would just cut in and carry on. Now that does not mean, we talked about this before, this does not mean that you're carrying now 256 kilos of dead weight. First of all, the battery weighs about 100 kilos, about the same as a human having a passenger in your car. Secondly, it's now running from now on as a hybrid, which means that the petrol engine and the electric motor are working together. You'll notice that when it says your range is down to 0 miles, the battery's not flat, the battery's still about 1/4 charged. That allows it to carry on running like a regular hybrid, still giving you something like 60 odd miles per gallon. It's also bad to discharge a battery all the way to 0, so although it's telling you the range is 0, the battery is not fully discharged. Similarly, when your battery is fully charged and it's displaying a range of 37 miles in this car, the battery's actually at about 90%. So you may read, especially with Teslas, that you should not charge them to 100% all the time. You should just charge them to about 80, something like that. In this car, when it says it's full, it's actually about 90% charged. So the battery will look after itself, don't worry. It's actually low stress. It's a really nice car to drive. You just waft around in electric mode. Now I stopped at this gas station, or petrol station as we call it in the UK, to illustrate a key point. I'm trying to lose a bit of weight. The less often you go to a gas station or a petrol station, the less often you buy all this kind of stuff. So if you want to do a bit for world obesity and your own obesity, if you're not stopping at gas stations all the time, you might lose some weight. Not promising anything, you might not. Now then, I need to eat all this before I get home. Right, my electric range is now 0. It's cut into hybrid mode, and from the energy information display you can see the engine is spinning the electric motor, which is charging the battery, which, as you see, isn't actually empty. It's about 1/5 to 1/4 full. And if you want pretty pictures on your screen, it actually displays the energy flow. Now when if I were to put my foot down hard, moving off, you might see power going from the engine to the wheels and the battery back to the electric motor to the wheels. So it's actually using the petrol engine to power the wheels, and well, it's gone the other way now. It's actually put some energy in the battery, and we're actually, because we're going slowly, it's putting battery power to the electric motor, and that's powering the wheels. The engine's actually cut out. So even though my electric only range is showing as 0, it's now just running as a regular hybrid. There we are. Now the engine's come on again. We're going up a hill. If I brake, you'll see power moving from the wheels back to the battery. That's regenerative braking. So we're going down a hill now, and now you see the power going from the wheels, which are spinning the electric motor to charge the battery. That's regenerative braking. That's harder braking, using the disc brakes. Okay, so we're going down a hill still. So we're putting power into the battery. The wheels are turning the electric motor, and the motor's acting as a generator. So all the way down the hill there, we're actually producing electricity ourselves, charging the battery, so we're not using the disc brakes at all. So let's say you've come home, you're tired, you just want to go in the house. You might want to plug the car in. If you plug the car in overnight, it will give you 37 miles in this car of electric range. Now in reality it's about 32 miles because all the manufacturers overstate it, but even so, on this car that's actually more than many plug-in hybrids, even ones that are twice the price. It may be because it's so aerodynamic, I don't know. It's not an SUV shaped car. Once you've plugged it in, you might want it to come on in the middle of the night and run overnight because the electricity is cheaper. So we can go to charging settings. You can actually set this on the car. Here we are, charge on schedule. Let's just check what I've scheduled. Okay, and now it says OK, press OK, it will remember those. Right, now it's set to charge on schedule and we can turn the power off on the car. You can choose charge now, and there's another way of doing that as well. So we turn it off, there we go. Right, that's it. It will come on at 1 in the morning, it will charge, and then at 7 in the morning it will stop charging. You don't need to charge it quickly. The battery isn't the same size as in a Tesla, for example. It's just a moderate sized battery, just for 37 miles. So if you charge it gently overnight, over a period of 5 hours, 6 hours, you're not slamming power into the battery, warming it up, which will actually shorten its life. It's actually better to charge it slowly, if anything. Now you might think you can't be bothered to plug the charger in at the end of the day. Well, let's just see how long it takes. So release it, open the door, it's ready there, turn around. My charger's in the garage, and but it actually extends out, so I can charge it in the garage or out. Plug it in. Okay, on my charger I would actually sort of fiddle with various menus, so I can put on a fast charge there, and off it goes. Now in this car, do you remember I set the timer? So if that middle bar flashes of the 3, it means it's not going to charge until the timer says charge, which I set to 1 in the morning. However, I can override it if I want to charge it now. Suppose I'm in a hurry, suppose it's the middle of the day or something. So come back to here. Right, cancel the timer. See the clock there? Press it. Right, now it's changed. That shows it's about half charged, and it's just going to charge it now until it's full. And we'll just check the charger. You can see I have some gas guzzlers here as well as efficient cars, and don't know if you can see that, it's actually putting 3.4 kilowatts there into the car. That's a Zappi charger, just if you're interested. The advantage of a Zappi charger is if you've got solar panels, as I have, see, solar panels, you can use it to intelligently charge the car. So if the solar panels are generating 3,000 watts, say in the daytime, and your house is using 500 watts, it'll put the other 2,500 watts into the car. So it'll vary the charge rate to match what your panels are producing. If you don't have solar panels, you don't need a charger that's this sophisticated. You can just get a more basic one. Also, you do get a grant which partially covers the installation of the charger from the government. So you might be wondering, do you need to charge this when you're out? Well, the answer is no, not really, because if you're on a long journey, the petrol engine just cuts in after you've used up your first sort of 32 miles on electric power. But the point really is that the most journeys people do are less than 50 miles a day. So if you're going shopping, going to the industrial estate, going to the tip, picking your children up, you know, it's all neighbourhood local stuff. You can do all that on electric, which is miles cheaper than petrol. Now with the car you get these 2 bags. Now what's in each one? This one has a charging cable, so you can charge it from a commercial charger when you're out. Now if you've got a plug-in hybrid, you don't really need to do that unless you're really penny pinching because you've got a petrol engine. But some people top up when they go to the supermarket. Some supermarkets have them for free. That's probably sometimes why you see plug-in hybrid electric taxis stuck in them, hogging them. And then you get this one. Now this is one's actually more useful and more interesting for a plug-in hybrid. Now this one's different. It's got a plug that plugs into the car, and then it's got a mains plug, and it's got a big module here with a display on it, and that's called the granny charger. It doesn't matter what car you've got, that's what it's known as, the granny charger, and it means you can charge your car up from a normal domestic socket. Now on the Hyundai one, this one, there's a rubber button on the back. If you press it, you can alter the rate at which it charges from about 5 amps up to about 10 amps. You can have low, medium and high, and I measured them and I did a separate video on this. People often ask, can you plug that into an extension lead? Well, you're not meant to, shall we say, because in this plug there's a temperature sensor. If it gets too hot, this cuts the power. So if you're going to use an extension lead, obviously the extension lead part of that equation doesn't have any protection. So you either get the best quality extension lead you can possibly get that will carry the highest current, and maybe, I'm just suggesting, you can actually reduce the current from around 10-11 amps, bearing in mind 13 is your maximum, and everything might get a bit warm. You could go down to around 5 amps and just leave it plugged in all night. I'm not saying you should, but it is adjustable on some of these granny chargers in a downward direction, because if the car's going to be parked all night and it's only got a battery capable of 37 miles, it's not a Tesla or a fully electric car, you don't need to ram power into it as fast as you can. In fact, it's better for the battery if you just charge it gently. So for many weeks I used this to charge the car before I got my proper wall-mounted charger, and it was fine. And I put it on the lowest power setting and I left it on all night. This is the end of the video, so to recap, if you don't have anywhere to charge your car at home, for instance you have to park your car on the street, then there's no point having a car with a charger port. So there's probably not much point having a fully electric car or a plug-in hybrid. In that case you'd be best off to buy a hybrid, or self-charging hybrid, which is what Toyota call them. That's just a regular hybrid, which charges the battery using the petrol engine, and it uses the electric motor as a generator, and then when it needs power from the battery to assist the petrol engine, it will draw it to power the electric motor, and at low speeds around town it will run on the electric motor up to about the 20 mile an hour point, something like that, and that will give you the best fuel economy, because petrol engines are not efficient at low speed. They're not efficient in start-stop driving. That's where having the small electric motor to just carry you around town at slow speeds is really helpful to the fuel economy. If you've got access to a charger, then, and you are worried that you might run out of range, it's called range anxiety if you had a fully electric car. As an interim step, I mean basically we're moving towards fully electric cars eventually, but as an interim step, if you want just a flavour of what it's like, you could buy a plug-in hybrid, which is what this car is. Just be aware that the range, the all-electric range of some plug-in hybrids is actually woefully terrible, down as low as 14 miles, and it's not based on the price of the car. Don't trust the dealers. Do your own homework, find out, look at the lots of reviews, read them, look at the range. One of the reasons I bought this car is that it does a claimed 37 miles fully electric. It's actually more like 32, but that's still on the high end, and this is by no means the most expensive plug-in hybrid you can buy by any means at all. So bear that in mind. The final thing is you should look at your driving patterns. Most people drive less than 50 miles a day. I actually drive exactly 30 miles a day, which is why this car is perfect for me. I run it in electric mode a lot of the time. If I need to make a long trip to see my sister, for example, who lives 250 miles away, then yeah, I'll use the petrol engine with the electric motor, and it'll run as a normal hybrid car. If you're a salesman, for example, or a service engineer traveling enormous distances every day, then you might be worried about the range limit if you have a fully electric car and having to plug in at public chargers. There are some electric cars with a very high range, around the 300-mile mark. At the budget end, the Kia Hyundai make ones which do about 280 miles on a charge. Tesla obviously are well known. Some do over 300 miles on a charge. But if you're worried about the range, then again, having a plug-in hybrid means for all your day-to-day mundane, going to the supermarket, picking up children, going to B&Q, you can do it all in electric mode. If you're doing a long journey, then it will run as a hybrid. One final point, depending on road tax exemptions in your country, some people buy a hybrid vehicle or a plug-in hybrid vehicle to lower their company car tax. Most well known are the Mitsubishi PHEV, which is like a moderate sized SUV, and they would be returned after the 3-year lease, and the charging cable would be unused. And clearly people were using them to offset car tax and business company car tax rather than actually use them in any way as a plug-in hybrid vehicle. So basically, if you cannot be bothered to even plug your car in, then clearly don't get a car that has a charge port. You'd be better off with a regular hybrid. But I hope I showed you in this video, it actually only takes a second or two to plug it in overnight, and it's much cheaper to charge it at home rather than on public chargers anyway. Some companies do a very, very low overnight rate, which is set up for people who own electric or partially electric cars.